All right, so getting ready for a job interview in English, it can feel kind of like you're stepping onto a stage with a spotlight, uh, you know, burning right on you, especially if English isn't your native language. But hey, don't worry about it. That's what we're here for. In this deep dive, we're going to be breaking down this podcast episode that's got a ton of tips, specifically for people whose native language isn't English, who are trying to navigate job interviews. So think of us like your backstage crew. We're going to help you get prepped and looking good for stellar performance.
And what's really interesting is this podcast just jumps right into something that people don't really think about too much, the psychological game of an interview.
Okay, so what do they actually mean by that?
Basically, it's about understanding that an interview, it's not just about, listen out your skills and qualifications. It's about showing that you're really interested, that you're someone who likes to take initiative, and that you really get the company's culture. And the podcast says one of the best ways to do this is by, you guessed it, doing your research.
All right, like really digging deep into the company's website, their mission, their values, even recent news articles about them. But sometimes it feels like companies that just put a bunch of trendy words on their website. How much can you really learn from that?
Well, think of it this way. When you really research a company, you're not only getting info, you're showing the person interviewing you that you're proactive and resourceful. You're showing them that you're not looking for just any job. You want to work specifically at their company and do what they do.
So it's almost like a subtle way of, flattering them. Like saying, hey, I think you guys are so cool. I did all this research on you.
Exactly. And it means you can tailor your answers to what their goals and values are. It's the difference between showing up with just any old flowers and really picking out specific ones that the person will love because you know their favorite colors and scents.
I like that analogy. And talking about tailoring your answers, this podcast episode really gets into the nitty-gritty of answering those typical questions they ask you in an interview. They even do some role play to show you how to answer effectively, which I thought was really useful.
Yeah, and they break down what a good answer is made of. It's not just about summarizing what you've done. It's about strategically highlighting your achievements and skills, specifically the ones that are most relevant to the job.
And they say it's important to put some passion and, enthusiasm in your answers, right?
Right.
Really letting your genuine excitement for the job shine through.
Absolutely. Imagine you're at a dinner party and someone asks you about your favorite hobby. You wouldn't just say, oh, I like painting. You get all excited, your eyes would light up, and you go on and on about what draws you to it. You want to bring that same kind of energy to how you answer questions in your interview.
So it's about making a connection with the person interviewing you, not just giving a speech.
Precisely. Now, one way they say you can make your answers better is by giving real-life examples. Instead of just saying, I'm great at solving problems, tell a specific story about a time you had to solve a problem.
Okay, so how would you answer that classic question? Tell me about a time you had to deal with a challenge at work.
Let's say you want a project management job. Instead of just saying that you can handle tight deadlines, you could talk about a specific project where you had to do a lot of things at once and deal with things you weren't expecting. Describe what happened, the steps you took to handle it, and the positive result you got because of what you did.
So showing, not telling. You're giving them a look into how you actually work and deal with tough situations.
Exactly. And when you use concrete examples, your answers are more memorable and relatable. It helps the interviewer picture you doing the job and see how your skills would work in real life.
This is great for showing off your strengths. But there's that one question that makes everyone nervous. What's your biggest weakness? How do we answer that without sounding like we're just trying to turn something bad into something good?
The podcast actually gives a really good strategy for this. They say you should honestly admit to a weakness, but you should frame it in a way that shows you know yourself and you want to grow.
Okay, so how do you do that without sounding fake?
Instead of saying something generic like, I'm a perfectionist, which can sound like you don't really mean it, pick a weakness that a lot of people have and is relevant to the job. Then explain what you're doing to get better. For example, you could say, I tend to get really focused on the little details, which sometimes slows me down. To deal with this, I've started using project management tools to help me prioritize tasks and stay on track.
So it's like saying, hey, I know I could fall into this trap, but I'm taking steps to avoid it.
Yeah.
That shows you're someone who takes initiative and wants to improve. Those are both qualities employers look for.
Exactly. And by sharing a specific example of how you're addressing that weakness, you're showing that you're not just saying it, you're actually doing something about it.
Okay, so we talked about preparing and answering those common questions. But what about us taking control and asking them questions.
That's perfect, because the podcast emphasizes how important it is to ask thoughtful questions. It shows that you're not just waiting for them to offer you the job, you're really involved in the process and want to learn more.
But what kind of questions should we ask? What makes a question really thoughtful?
Well, they actually give 3 great examples that really show what it means to be someone who's valuable to a team. First, they say you should ask, what does success look like in this role?
Okay, that's good. It shows that you're not just there to punch in and out. You really want to know what the company expects of you and how you can make a real difference.
Exactly. And the second question they recommend is, can you tell me more about the team I'd be working with?
This is where you get to kind of dig a little deeper into the company's culture, right? Like, what's it like working with this team? Are they collaborative? Do they support each other?
Yes. It shows you're not just thinking about yourself. You're thinking about how you would fit into the whole team and contribute to a positive environment. And last, they suggest asking, what opportunities for growth and development does the company offer?
Ah, the classic what's in it for me question, but asked in a much more sophisticated way.
Exactly. It shows ambition and that you want to keep learning and improving, and it subtly lets you see if the company cares about professional development, which is a big deal when it comes to how happy people are with their jobs.
These are all really great questions. I'm definitely going to use these next time I have an interview. But it's not just about what you say, it's about how you say it too. Right?
You're absolutely right. The podcast really emphasizes how important nonverbal communication is. It plays a huge role in how people see you. Even if your English is perfect, if your body language is screaming nervous wreck, it can hurt your chances.
So what are some body language things we can do to seem confident and engaged? What should we focus on?
Well, they say it's important to smile, maintain good posture, and make eye contact to come across as confident and friendly.
Okay, so we've talked about looking confident with our body language, but how do we actually feel confident when our heart is racing and our hands are sweaty?
Well, the podcast doesn't really talk about how to deal with anxiety, but they do give some kind of hidden strategies throughout the episode.
Like what?
Remember how they said it's important to practice your answers? Repetition is key. The more you rehearse, the more confident you'll feel when they ask you those questions in the real interview. It's like training for a marathon, you know? You wouldn't just show up on race day without running beforehand.
So it's about getting that muscle memory for both the language and just the flow of the conversation.
Yeah.
The more comfortable you are with what you're going to say, the less likely you are to get tripped up because you're nervous.
Exactly. And remember how they told listeners to replay the episode? That repetition does 2 things. It helps you remember the content, but it also calms those pre-interview nerves. It's like listening to your favorite song before a big game, gets you in the zone and helps you shake off those jitters.
I'm all for any tips that involve listening to awesome music. But let's be real, interviews aren't always face-to-face anymore. What about phone and video interviews? Do those same body language tips work when you're just a tiny box on a screen?
That's a good question. And while the podcast mostly focuses on interviews in person, a lot of the advice still works great for the virtual world.
Like what?
Well, for one thing, making sure you communicate clearly and concisely is even more important in phone or video interviews. You don't have those little visual cues to help you get your message across.
Right, so your words got to do all the work. No rambling, no going off on tangents, just getting straight to the point.
Exactly. And even though the interviewer might not see your whole body, sitting up straight and looking at the camera still shows confidence and that you're engaged. It shows that you're present, you're paying attention, and you're interested in connecting.
It's like you're sending a signal that you're taking this seriously,
Yeah.
even if you're wearing your pajamas.
And don't forget about having a clean background. You want them to focus on you, not that pile of laundry in the corner.
Or that poster of your favorite boy band from the 90s.
Exactly. It's all about making a professional and welcoming atmosphere, even if it's just a small part of your home.
Okay, so we talked about looking confident, but what about talking about salary? That could feel kind of scary, especially when English isn't your first language.
You're right, it's a delicate thing. But the podcast, while not going deep into salary negotiation tactics, does give some helpful advice.
Like what? Tell me.
Remember how they said you should research the company? That research should also include finding out what people usually get paid for similar jobs in your industry and area.
Okay, so the more you know, the better, right? If you know what you're worth, you'll feel more confident when you're talking about how much you want to get paid.
Exactly. And remember how they talked about showing off your achievements and what you've contributed? That's important when talking about salary, too. You're basically making a case for why you deserve to get paid a certain amount based on what you bring to the company.
It's like saying, Hey, I'm not just asking for a number, I'm showing you why I'm worth it, with proof of my skills and experience. But even with all that preparation talking about money, can still be nerve-wracking.
For sure. But remember, you can do this. Keep that calm and professional attitude we've been talking about. Be assertive, but not aggressive. Confident, but not arrogant. And even if their first offer isn't what you were hoping for, don't be afraid to politely ask for more. Or negotiate other things like more vacation time or opportunities to develop your skills.
So it's about finding a solution that works for both you and the company. But the whole job search thing can be really stressful. It's easy to get caught up in it all and forget to take care of ourselves.
You're absolutely right. And while the podcast doesn't specifically talk about self-care, their focus on confidence and preparation can be seen as indirect ways to take care of yourself.
Okay, I can see that.
Yeah,
Like if you feel prepared and confident, you're less likely to be super anxious.
exactly. Preparing thoroughly, practicing your answers, and picturing yourself succeeding can all help you feel more calm and confident.
It's like giving yourself a pep talk. Reminding yourself that you have the skills, the experience, and the drive to do great.
And remember, even if you don't get every job you interview for, it doesn't mean you're not good enough. It's all part of the process. And every interview helps you learn and get better at it.
So as we finish this part of our deep dive, what's the most important thing to remember about dealing with those pre-interview jitters?
Be kind to yourself, be happy with how far you've come, and keep that positive energy going.
Okay, so we're back for the last part of our deep dive into ACE job interviews in English. We've covered a lot already. From how important it is to prepare and use good body language to handle in virtual interviews and even those tough salary talks.
And in this final part, we're going to give you some bonus tips that can really make you stand out. It's all about adding that extra shine, that special something that makes you unforgettable.
Ooh, I love a little bit of magic. So what's this secret ingredient we're adding to our interview success recipe?
Well, the podcast kind of hints at how important storytelling is. It's not just about listing your skills and experience. It's about weaving them into a story that really grabs the interviewer's attention.
I've heard that before, but I always have trouble with it. It feels kind of forced to try and make every answer into a story.
I get what you mean. It's not about forcing a story where it doesn't belong. It's about realizing that stories are how we connect as humans. They're how we understand the world, how we learn, and how we remember things.
Okay, so how do we do this without sounding like we're reading a bedtime story?
Think of it this way. When you're answering questions in an interview, look for ways to connect what you've done to an emotion that people can relate to, or to a moment when you changed. Instead of just saying, "I'm a great team player," tell a specific story that shows your collaboration skills in action. Describe the challenge, the teamwork, the win, and how that experience shaped you.
So it's like painting the picture with your words. Instead of just saying, I'm passionate about this, tell a story about what sparked that passion. Maybe it was a childhood memory, a mentor who inspired you, or a project that really got you excited.
Exactly. Those stories make your answers come alive and help the interviewer connect with you on a deeper level. They're also more likely to remember you because you've given them something unique and interesting, something that sets you apart from all the other people interviewing.
All right, story time it is. But what about tailoring our answers to the specific company and the job we're interviewing for? I feel like everyone says to do that, but it's harder than it sounds.
You're right, it takes work, but it's worth it. It shows the person interviewing you that you did your homework and you really want this job. Not just any job. Remember that analogy we used about bringing a carefully chosen bouquet of flowers?
Yeah, I loved that.
Well, think of tailoring your answers, like making that perfect bouquet for this specific company. You're thinking about their tastes, their values, their goals, and you're picking the flowers, your skills, and experiences that will really appeal to them.
Okay, I get the picture. So how do we actually do this?
Before your interview, go back to the company's website, their social media, and any recent news articles about them. Think about how your skills and experiences match up with what they're trying to achieve right now. Then when you're answering questions, mention specific details that show you understand their world.
So if they're launching a new product, I might mention how my marketing experience could help. Or if they're expanded into a new market, I could talk about my language skills or my understanding of different cultures.
Exactly. Those little touches show that you've put in the effort and that you're really invested in this particular company. It's like saying, I'm not just here for a paycheck. I'm here to help you succeed.
Okay, this is all great advice. But before we wrap up, I want to talk about something that's not really mentioned in the podcast, but I think it's super important. Being yourself.
Couldn't agree more. With everyone trying to have the perfect resume and saying all the right things, it's easy to want to be someone you think the interviewer wants to see. But you know what? Being genuine really works. When you're yourself, when you let your personality and your passion show, it creates connection that no amount of practiced answers can match.
It's like that saying, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. If you can show your real passion and enthusiasm, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Exactly. So while it's important to prepare and practice, don't be afraid to let your true self shine. Share your unique perspective, your interests, your real excitement for the opportunity. It's like adding a little spice to your interview. It makes you memorable, it makes you stand out, and it makes the whole experience more fun for both you and the interviewer.
And remember, a job interview goes both ways. It's not just them checking you out, it's you checking them out too. Do you agree with what they believe in? Can you see yourself doing well in their company culture? Don't be afraid to ask those tough questions to see if it's really the right place for you.
So as we wrap up our deep dive, remember this. Preparing is key, but so is being yourself. Show off your skills, share your stories, and let your passion shine through. And most importantly, believe in yourself and your ability to succeed.
We've talked about a lot in this deep dive, from the basics of getting ready for an interview to those little things that can really make you shine. We hope these tips and ideas have been helpful and that you'll use them in your next job interview. Remember, you got this.